Mind the gap.
Hello again, Fabrizia. How are you doing today?
Hi. Hi, Hugo. I'm good. Very good.
Great. Great to be talking with you again. Last week we discussed about a little bit about business topics. We are going to do that more in the future, but we know that not everybody who is listening to this podcast is thinking of turning pro. So we have other people who want to stay hobbyists or amateurs, and there's nothing wrong about that, right? They want to hear from us about other topics.
Oh, yeah. They are the lucky ones, actually, in a way. I'm always a little bit envious of actually somebody who can just, do photography for fun. It's fantastic.
Follow their passion with no commitment obligations.
Yeah.
That's great, but we chose a different path, and we'll talk about that path. But today I would like to talk about something that, again, comes up again and again in my interaction with people online, in forums and groups and whatnot. And even people who want to stay hobbyists and amateurs still want some amount of recognition from their peers. I don't believe in those who say, I only shoot for myself and I don't care what others think. Because if they really did, they would not share their photos online, right? I don't know what you think about that.
Oh, absolutely. There's always, I think it's an innate human trait to share what we love with others and to be, proud of what we make. I think it's for everybody is the same. Some people are more shy about it, more insecure about it. And some people then are a bit more secure about it to actually put it out there. It's always a bit difficult, isn't it, to show up and to show your work. But then when you do show it, you want people to like it, right? You show it because you think it's good. And then you want people to confirm that it's good.
Some kind of affirmation that what you're doing is maybe not the best in the world, but it's you're getting better. You're showing what you do because you're proud of it, or maybe you want some confirmation that you're progressing or stuff like that. And then sometimes what happens is that you get those critics that just like to take down other people's work.
Yes. That's a very sad thing to see, because sometimes, there's different types, but there's some people that only feel good about themselves when they put other people down, and so they will always have something negative to say about other people's work to kind of feel better about what they do. And that's a very unhealthy, unhelpful, and very sad kind of thing.
Yeah, the usual interaction that I witness goes like that. Somebody posts a photo online, they get a negative comment, maybe not even a constructive comment, something just this photo ranging from, oh, I've got blown highlights, or hair of the model are out of place, to something really nasty like this photo is worthless. Okay.
Yeah.
And then somebody, maybe I will complain about this. I will say that that's not a nice thing to say. You should always strive to find something positive, to give some encouragement, to give some constructive critique, maybe, instead of being totally negative. And the usual reply is, well, why do those people post their photos? Is only just to gather likes? Should we always be expected to say something nice and to give a like to a photo? I think that they're missing the point. The point is not that we are posting photos out there just to get likes, and as if likes would just grow our ego. It's a different thing. I don't know how to say it better, but if you what's your take on this?
Well, I think that the moment you step out and you show your work out there, online, on social media, or wherever, you go, whether it's a closed group or an open group or your page, wherever you decide to put it out, there's a degree of courage. It takes courage to do that. A lot of people don't post their stuff because they're not confident, or they're scared that it will be judged, obviously. So it's a bit like going on stage and singing a song. It's not easy. You can be a bad singer, but kudos to you for getting on stage and singing a song in front of people. So at least that should be acknowledged as a good thing. Then if you're totally out of tune, it's a bit of a shame that we have to sit through it. But on social media, we don't have to worry about it. If I see something that I don't like, I scroll through it. If I see something that I don't like, or that has a fault, or has potential, and there is a technical mistake or something in it, like you say, it's a nice photo, everything's fine, maybe the highlights are a little bit blown, then one could say, well, this is good about it, and just that little thing you could do different next time.
Yeah.
Just watch out in your Instagram, your histogram. My God. And then watch out for that, underexpose a little bit, and all of that, or take it down. Maybe in Lightroom you can sometimes save a little bit of those highlights. Sometimes it's just because they're not used to looking at that. We develop an eye as photographers. We see a lot more than normal people do, and we don't really realize it. So when I look at a photo, we look at 1,000 million things, and the more you look at I used to be an image editor, and so you are used to evaluating all sorts of stuff when you see an image that most people don't even notice or think about. So it really depends on who is criticizing your image, and do they know what they're talking about?
Yeah.
Because that's the first thing. If I publish something and people say they really it's worthless, or it's not a good photo, first of all I go and see who is saying that, because if it's somebody that I really have admiration for, somebody that I admire, somebody who is a respected professional in his field, I can challenge him, or I can say, wow, I didn't see that, thank you for telling me. But those people would never just put you down. They would always give some kind of constructive criticism. If it's a nobody from nowhere that just wants to shoot my photo down, then I'm going to say, well, thank you very much, it really doesn't make any difference to me. But some people get upset, and that is sad. If you get a bad, nasty comment and that stops you from putting out your work the next time, that is a bad thing. That is a shame, and it shouldn't happen.
I see a lot of critics that would just say that a photo is wrong or a mistake based on a preconceived idea of what a typical photo for a typical genre should look like. Now, of course, there are rules. I mean, if you're shooting a beauty portrait, you don't want the hair of the model to be out of place. You don't want the skin to look bad. You don't want the lighting to look harsh, and so on. There are some canons of a genre, but in general, you cannot say that a photo is wrong because you are assuming that it has to fit a certain genre or trope. It's the intention of the photographer might have been completely different. Might have been to do something that is outside of the canons of that genre. Sometimes it's obvious that they're trying their hand at doing a boudoir portrait, but it didn't actually come out really well. Sometimes it's not so obvious. I've seen photos of landscape that are, in terms of post-processing, a bit, for me, over the top, extreme, unrealistic, and so on. And I say, that's not my type of photography, but I'm not judging your photo based on what my preconceived idea of what a landscape photo should look like, because not all landscape photos are the same. Then people have been breaking the boundaries of the genre for many years and doing something different. If what you wanted to do, your intent was to do something different, I'm going to judge your photo, whether it's successful or not, based on whether it achieves what you meant it to achieve, not on what I wanted to achieve. I can say it's not for me, but I cannot say it's bad.
Yeah, well, there are a few things where I draw a line, because they are filter stuck on top, selective color. There is this meme that I put on all the time, and it's like every time you do a selective color, a kitten dies. That's like social media thing. So there's things that I don't do, that I don't that my clients don't ask me for, and that but they did at the beginning, because everybody was doing it where I live. So it's just a matter of learning to see, and learning to not just slap on some presets and turn the sky purple just for the sake of it, if there is no reason for it. And so there are some things that are just bad taste, and I can't, but I can just scroll. I don't have to comment on those unless they ask me specifically to comment on those. That's not my genre, and that's not my thing. But I remember once, it was really funny. Last year I started the course, and a photographer came and signed up for the course, and then we talked on the phone about something, and she very honestly said, I signed up to your business course because I looked at your website and I thought, if somebody who does such bad photography can make money out of it, I have something to learn from her. And she signed up. And she signed up because of that. Needless to say, within a month or two, she was not a good fit for the course or the way I was teaching. Not everybody gets my style, so she moved out. But it made me laugh, and it did not offend me in any way, because I know that I'm not the greatest photographer in the world. Most people like what I do, but some people obviously don't, and that's okay. It was funny though.
Yeah, I think we can all agree that selective coloring is bad. And again, when people do it and show it, I just gloss over. Typically,
the thing is, if they ask me for a critique, I can say no, but I can say why not.
Yeah.
I can tell you why that is not a good idea in terms of where you want your eye to go first, and why do you want the eye to go to the rose instead of the bride's face, and that doesn't make sense. And so it's something constructive anyway. It's not about ditching and shaming the person.
The problem with selective coloring is not selective coloring per se, is that people use it because it's a cliche and they use it without any specific purpose, and now you can just click a button and you get 20 things blue in the picture without any logic. And then when people say, well, that's not a really good use of selective coloring, they point out, well, but even Spielberg used selective coloring. Yeah, well, then, but Spielberg used it once. That he had a point using selective color then. But I'm digressing.
Yeah, it's the difference.
So my take on this criticism, and why I do not take to those kind of critics well myself. If people do critique my photos in that way, I might do one of two things. Either ignore the thing completely, which is probably the healthy thing to do, or turn sarcastic, which is probably not very healthy, because then it results in a debate and a discussion. And people, I think there's a sense of entitlement. People feel entitled to giving you their opinion about anything, and they prefix it or attach it at the end. But this is just my opinion, and I say, so what? Everybody has an opinion. As I think it was Clint Eastwood in a movie, he said, opinions are like assholes, everybody has one. Doesn't mean we should be forced to see yours.
Absolutely. Yeah. Everybody, especially on social media, everybody has an opinion on everything. And that is a big problem, especially in the political debates and stuff like that, or scientific, or, any kind of deeper debate. So photography really, what I don't like to see is, I don't really care what people write. Of course, I wish they didn't. But what I don't like to see is people getting hurt by a bad comment or by a photo that doesn't get enough likes or whatever. Because, yes, not everything I put out there gets an awful lot of likes. Some things get totally ignored. It happens sometimes because it's just the time I post it, nobody sees it. And sometimes just because it just doesn't fly with many people. But to be put out and discouraged and hurt by a bad comment really, really is totally unfounded, because that comment comes from nowhere and it's gratuitous and there is nothing to back it up. I mean, I can just go on everybody's picture and say, I hate that, it's horrible. And so what? It doesn't mean that you should stop showing your work and being proud of what you do, because by constructive criticism, that's how we get better. So when I show some of my work to other photographers who are way better than me, and they say, this I love, this I hate, this is not, or hate, they don't never say that, but they say, this doesn't work for this reason. And they will tell me why it doesn't work and for what reason. And so I can see it and say, oh, right, okay, well, I'm not going to be making that mistake again. Next time I'll do it differently. And that's how we get better. Showing our work is really important, finding people who are better than us to show it to. And if we put it on social media, we must be prepared to take whatever comes and let it, fly over our heads. If we don't have to take it. We don't have to take it personally, and we don't have to listen to everything that everybody says.
No, I don't take it personally. I just love being sarcastic.
Yeah, well, then if you want a good laugh, you can play with it, of course.
No, more seriously, sometimes, I see a nasty critique, and then I ask, please don't be so nasty in your critique. And the usual retort is that, well, this is a public group and people are putting, so they should expect this. And besides, the purpose of this group is for everyone to become better. And if they get no critique, they're not going to become better. And I say, well, it's not possible to really become better by getting critiques from random strangers on the internet, one thing. And two, are you really giving this critique because you are trying to help the person you're critiquing, or really reflect honestly about why you're doing this? Are you doing this to help this person grow, or are you doing this because it makes you feel better, because it makes you feel superior, because maybe you've been doing the same kind of stupid mistakes and horrible and selective coloring or whatever it is until a month ago, and now you learn something. You learn how to read the histogram on your camera, and strong with this newly found knowledge, now you want to impart this knowledge and show to everyone else that you've learned, and now you can teach others. Is this the real reason why you're doing it? Think about it. Not that it ever works, because people don't want to think about it, but at least I try to tell them so. Yeah,
it's a bit, like people saying, oh, the subject should have been put a little bit more to the right because it doesn't fit the rule of thirds. Mm-hmm. But, you could have put it anywhere. There's so many grids that we could follow if we want to follow a grid or off the grid. It doesn't really matter. So it's really, photography is so personal, and it really depends. And I've seen it even in professional groups where some of the people giving criticisms are very highly esteemed judges and professionals. And I've seen discussions where a judge against another judge saying that, what you're judging on this photo is not the reason it's failing, but this is the reason. And, even people at that level have different opinions on some images that are out there. So who is there to say? It's a matter of culture. It's a matter of maybe the knowledge of art history, maybe how much knowledge of, other work any photographers had before, how acquainted are they with some of the classics, with some of the, big black and white photographers when they judge black and white. And, it's, you look at some of the, some photos from, I'm not going to mention any names, but some photos from way back, and you go like, oh, these blacks are so black and these whites are so blown out.
Mm-hmm.
And you go like, that would be a mistake now. And you go, but that image is iconic. And so why? Because the emotion that it conveys is incredible. So, technical perfection, again, is not everything. And we could go on and talk about this for hours, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, I think that's some types of photography, any type of art. There are some languages, right? Art doesn't mean that anything goes.
No.
There are art is a language. Different types of artistic endeavors have different languages. And different currents and genres within art have their own languages. And it's important to know them. But it's also very important that your critic knows about the specific language that you are trying to speak, and they don't think you are speaking a different language, and you're judging your work based on what they think you are speaking. Because if you are trying to talk Japanese and somebody thinks you're trying to talk Chinese, and they will correct you, your Chinese pronunciation is not right. You say, I'm not speaking Chinese, I'm speaking Japanese, actually. I mean, this is a silly example, but it happens. It happens. Yes. Even with professionals, as you said. Sometimes they are not prepared to, not aware of the fact that the thing they are criticizing is actually speaking in a different language than they expect it to.
Yeah, it happens at every level. So every criticism you take, I'm saying to our listeners, take it with a grain of salt. Go and see the nugget of truth that may be hidden in there, because maybe there is a mistake and something you can get better on. But don't take it personally. And if it's just some jerk's opinion, just let it go. That's it.
What about self-criticism? Anything about? Because I know many people are the worst critics, right?
Yes, we are. And I know, and actually I think about this often, because sometimes I don't publish photos because I don't think they're good enough sometimes, or they're not that brilliant. And then I see other photos and I go like, well, it's kind of the same. And and they're good photos. I like them. So I go, well, maybe I should fish that one out again. Old photos especially that we forget about. And we are sometimes better than we think and sometimes worse than we think. But we hardly ever judge ourselves carefully, rightly. So that's something else to bear in mind.
Oh, I was just reminded of a story. Let me see if I can find. I was reading about it in a book I read recently, and it's the title of the book is The Essence of Photography by Bruce Barnbaum. Barnbaum. Sorry for my bad pronunciation here. And here it is. He has a story about how he was a young photographer, and he's a landscape photographer mostly, and he shoots most of his work in black and white. And one day he submitted his work to Ansel Adams, who was already a living legend at the time, to get advice and critique. And he showed Adams both his black and white and color prints. And the advice that Barnbaum got was to avoid shooting black and white and to focus on color exclusively. And obviously Adams thought that Barnbaum's color work was superior to his black and white. But what Barnbaum did was exactly the opposite. He immediately stopped shooting color and worked exclusively in black and white from that moment on and for a long time. And he says, my reasoning was that I really wanted to perfect the mastery of black and white photography, something that Adams was not aware of. The master recognized that his disciple's color work was much better, so he told the latter to develop his strong point. But what Barnbaum realized was that practicing color was distracting him from his goal of getting really good at black and white. He could not do both at the same time. So he left the path that was clearly absorbing so much of his attention and effort, and which was leading him to produce really great work, at least in the eye of Ansel Adams, and the expense of the one he truly wanted to pursue. So says Barnbaum, the moral of the story, is that the words of even the best intentioned critics and of the ones with the most experience sometimes should be taken with a grain of salt. They are not always informed or aligned with our own goals.
Absolutely. That's a really good story, actually. Yeah.
I'm happy that I found it in my notes here. It wasn't planned. This wasn't planned, but I just
That's really good.
reminded it. Another thing, and maybe we can close with this, and again, seeing it from the other side, not of the person being criticized, but from the side of the critic, and reasoning about why people criticize other people's work. And it is a quote from Steven Pressfield from his book The War of Art. If listeners here, those few listeners who haven't read it, I highly recommend it.
Yeah.
And Pressfield says, if you find yourself criticizing other people, you're probably doing it out of resistance. And resistance is what this personalization of this force that we have within every one of us that stops us from doing our best work, from believing in ourselves, which is a lot of what we are talking of in this podcast. Anyway, Pressfield says, when we see others beginning to live their authentic selves, it drives us crazy if we have not lived out our own. Individuals who are realized in their own lives almost never criticize others. If they speak at all, is to offer encouragement. Watch yourself. Of all the manifestations of resistance, most only harm ourselves. Criticism and cruelty harm others as well. So,
yes,
that sums it
that
up
happens.
very well.
Yeah, that really sums it up. Thank you.
Oh, thanks to you. Anything else you want to add? Otherwise, I think we are pretty much done for this episode.
I wonder if we get any criticism for our podcasts. Let them write something, and then we can take everything with a grain of salt.
We'll take
but yes, we do want your comments. We want your comments, and we want your ideas for new podcasts and for, just whatever you want to suggest. Just record your messages at the end under whatever it is, wherever it is, and in the comments you can just record it. So we're looking forward to your comments and criticisms.
We'll take criticism with a grain of salt, but also graciously, I promise. We're not going to berate you for criticizing us. No, go back and read Steven Pressfield and never do it again. No, okay, that was not our intention. We're open to honest and constructive feedback.
Yes.
Okay, all good. And you can find us at closingthegap.live, as always. This is episode 12. You'll find it. You'll find all the show notes and links to the things we've mentioned there, comments, fields, and our button for recording your questions and comments. Thank you very much for listening. Until next time, just go out and shoot and take photos and don't care about the critics.
Bye-bye. Yes, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.